Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rugby Through the Leagues podcast. This week, we are joined by James Kent, who's kindly joined us. Polly has joined us as well. So, James, really appreciate your time,
Thanks for having me on.
I went to Rugby Club Luxembourg during the summer, met a few of the lads. Obviously, you were there for a period of time as well.
Yeah.
Was it kind of a natural situation for you to become more involved with the national side after being part of Rugby Club Luxembourg?
Not really, because I was last involved with the club in 2019, and then I went over to France to work in France for 4 or 5 years. So it was only really due to the family circumstances. My wife giving birth to our second, and then us moving back here after my stint in Paris. So I suppose it's almost come full circle. So it's been nice because I'm familiar with a few of the guys, and others I met for the first time when 3 days out from Czech Republic. So it's been good though. But like I said, this time around I've been able to actually take the time to get to know the guys, even the guys who are based offshore, connect with them, build relationships there, and so that's allowed me more time. And then some guys who I worked with, I hadn't probably worked with since 2019. It's allowed me to reconnect with them too. So that's been really good.
How did that call go then? Did you, obviously, as you said, you had quite short notice to get ready for the Czech Republic game. How did somebody just say, we've got a situation, you're back in the area, can you please just turn up? Pretty much, is that how it went?
Pretty much it. Because I was still with Monaco Rugby Sevens. We just finished the Super Sevens final in Paris, and so there was no conflict of interest there, obviously, anyway, because it's talking sevens, French sevens at that, and then you're talking trophy level. So there was no direct conflict of interest in terms of me being available. I was back in Luxembourg, and I was here and available. So it was very, very short to try and put things together. Even in terms of from the logistics point of view, there was a team manager to put in place. There were assistant coaches to put in place. I kept my analyst from Monaco on as well. Mate, I need you to give me a hand. And S&C as well. So everything was accelerated. But we managed to get a staff together and try to get a simplified game plan and just go to Prague with the players that we had at our disposal and those that could make it off short notice as well.
So on that, James, just, when you put your team together, do you go to people or is there like a little black book that every, international and senior coach has got that they can go, actually, these are the guys that I'd like to get involved, or is it just through friends or just people in the business and at that sort of kind of level of coaching and skill set?
So I thought it was a bit like, it was an awkward time in the season because it's mid-season. So a lot of coaches are, really in the middle, in the thick of it. So I relied on Scott Brown, who's a former player in the national team, now coaching a bit. And so he's played 10 and 9 as well for the national team. So a good attacking head on him. So I brought him in. Obviously, he's on site. Then I needed someone for the set piece. And a lot of the parameters that were sent up by the federation, I couldn't just bring in anyone. It had to fit certain criteria as well, certain coaching qualifications and everything that I was, I suppose, free enough to try and bring people in, but obviously it had to go through 4 more channels. I suppose to answer your question in a long-winded manner, it was a mix of both. It's the instant connections that we have in terms of timing and who we can get. I did reach out to quite a few guys as well, and not everybody was available. And like I said, we made with what we could. And I think in the end, now we've had more time to prepare as a staff. And I think going forward, now we've got, more clarity on everyone's role and responsibility. So that definitely makes it a lot easier.
So as you said there, you had to sort of throw together a simplified game plan. How did you do that at such short notice?
First, you understand what you have. what are you working with? Because it's all good having the philosophy, but if you don't have the cattle to do it, then it makes it hard. So that was the first thing. Know what our strengths are. Where can we, be a threat? And then looking at the Czech Republic, where are their threats? And how can we counter that? And I think for me, I've always liked to look at a team's strengths and then try to focus on their strengths rather than go, right, well, this is their weakness, let's target their weaknesses. So I think if we neutralise their strength, then that puts us in a better position. Like Luxembourg, there's a good, I suppose, good level of skill overall on average with the players. We've got players playing in France and Spain and the UK, Ireland, Scotland, Holland, Germany, the list goes on. So overall, they're well skilled. They can play with pace. What we needed to do against, opposition from the trophy, knowing that Luxembourg had been the team that had come up from conference into trophy, we knew that we had to make it, put a big focus on playing territory, because if we played in the right areas of the game, then opportunities would come and we wouldn't put ourselves under pressure. So just being able to simplify it that way and then get the guys on board and go, well, this is why we're doing it. And this is what it can bring us if we do it and if we stick to it. And I think we probably didn't do it to the full extent against Czech Republic, but I think with every game we improved and there was a noticeable improvement. Obviously Sweden, we got a red card 15 minutes in, so that made it hard. But, my big takeaway was that, with 60 minutes in all three games, we were 10 or 11 points, away from those teams. At halftime against Poland, we were in the lead. We might even be 20 points to 6 up, and we kick a few goals. So it's a lot of it is, I suppose block by block and seeing the improvements, and that was probably the most rewarding and pleasing thing, was to see how much we'd improved in a short amount of time in regards to those three games, knowing that we finished with probably the hardest game because Poland had come down from championship. And so we knew that was probably the hardest game to play, and we actually played probably our best half of rugby out of those three games against them.
Definitely. What's the federation put in front of you? Is there a timeline with a plan, or is it a case of you've got a bit of an open book to present back to the federation of how Luxembourg rugby is going to look? Because obviously when I was there, a lot of the lads are sort of homegrown. There's a real push for lads that are also, there's a lot of them that also speak Luxembourg, the language themselves. But so there's a bit more of an identity from players that are there. I got that proper identity feel that the lads they're together all week. It might be an hour and a half across the city because of the traffic, but everyone's like one part of one big plan. Is that kind of what the federation want, or is there a separate sort of schedule in place?
I think what we're trying to do as a team from an identity point of view, and what the federation, there needs to be the same, the vision needs to be there, and I suppose that we need to be going the same direction. We need to be aligned on how we get there, but we're not necessarily going to get there the same way, if that makes sense. Because we're almost going to try and build our team identity rather than us building the federation identity. Because within the federation, you've got, the men's, the women's, the junior, the under 18s, and the 16s, the sevens, the 15s.
You got the sevens program,
women's sevens as well. So there's, every team should have their identity, and whether we try and dig into that sort of, I suppose, cultural and national identity, because Luxembourg in itself is such a melting pot and diverse place to live. You've got over 50% expats within the team. We're speaking French, we're speaking English. There's obviously Luxembourgish, and so that in itself is, you're constantly going back and switching back and forth. And I think that the biggest challenge is probably that, because guys are playing different brands of rugby across Europe. You've got guys who've played probably all of their rugby in France but are eligible. Some who have only played in Luxembourg. We've all been, at RCL their entire life. So you're trying to merge those guys, and obviously different levels as well. So you're trying to merge those together in order for them to get, an understanding of what they can bring individually and how that can benefit all of us going forward.
Because you've got quite a decent sort of youth system over there as well. As when I was speaking to the Rugby Club Luxembourg lads, they were saying how many numbers are there and how many sort of players that are involved. Yeah. Obviously, have you got much of an impact upon that? Is there a sort of a plan for you guys to cascade the philosophy of playing downwards, or is it a case of that's how the national team play at the minute? And we'll work it out as it goes.
I think I was having this conversation with one of the junior coaches. I think in terms of how we want to play, it's going to be, but firstly based off genetics. Like genetically speaking, what have we got? Because if we had 6'6", 17-year-old Afrikaner locks, we'd be playing a very different kind of game, do you know?
Yeah.
So would everybody else. So that's not really the case for us. I'm involved with the academy as well, so the national academy, where we work with a few kids, and we get them in the gym and the dojo, out in the field every week. See them three times a week, and I think there's a pathway. However, I think one of our biggest constraints is the eligibility criteria. That's now changed in terms of World Rugby, because for under 18s, it's a different criteria than for seniors. So you might have a kid who's arrived in Luxembourg age 15, 16, because his parents have found work here, who's a very good player. You might be able to represent Luxembourg under 18s, but because it's only 1 year of license. However, as soon as he hits 18, he plays for the seniors. Well, he doesn't have the 10-year residency. Neither his parents are born here, nor his grandparents, nor him, and he doesn't have 5 years continuous registration in a club. So, then if he goes off to university and he plays rugby in university in the UK, then we lose him because he has to go back to zero. That really, I know obviously World Rugby, the 10-year residency was mainly for those tier 1 nations, tier 2 nations. However, for countries with less than 800,000 people, it really makes it difficult. For Tonga, for example, obviously they've only got 100,000 people, but through heritage, there's a lot more Tongans around the world, whether it's the States or Australia or New Zealand, than there are Luxembourgers.
Everyone's a cousin as well in Tonga as well, so I'm sure there's always a way in there.
So even if we were to take Poland, there's Poland, there was such a mass sort of emigration to the States or Australia, or that through heritage, through your grandparent, you're eligible for Poland, whereas we as a small country don't have that advantage. And I think that's one area. So, for example, Monaco, they have a different laws, basically, because they're able to get guys who are, in the bordering towns of Monaco. Whereas if we had also, a radius of 100 kilometres, then maybe from the city centre of Luxembourg City, then maybe, or 150 or 200 kilometres, then maybe that would expand, guys who were born in France but grew up in Luxembourg, well, they'd be eligible. They might have gone to school their whole lives in Luxembourg, but unless if they don't hit the 10-year residency, then it makes it, you can't pick them. So I think that's our biggest challenge, trying to find I suppose eligible players, and trying to build depth in competition.
Because obviously the pot of money, I'm sure, is not endless as well. So you've also got to navigate building an academy alongside eligibility, bringing players in without losing them going to other places to make money as a career. Rugby Club Luxembourg are now part of the newly formed version of the Bundesliga. And obviously them travelling to some of the bigger clubs. Have you noticed much of an impact upon the ability that some of the players are already seeing against play. I know they played in it last season, but they're now sort of, it's become a little bit more of a full-time model to obviously from the coaching side down. As playing such sides sort of changed what you've seen on training and stuff? Obviously, I know you haven't really seen much in the game time. But...
I mean, for me, Carl, the biggest positive is that they're playing more games. And I look at Spain, and we both know that the Spanish leagues, whether it's regional or you're talking Division de Honor, you're playing upwards of 25 games a sean.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're playing third, fifth tier in Spain, you're still getting a lot of games through the season.
Game time.
And, when you look at previous Bundesliga seasons where guys are playing 10 games in a season, when we played Czech Republic, we had guys who hadn't played since before Christmas and 3 months without playing.
Really?
Because of the winter break that they have. So it's a big ask then to step into an international game, having not, had a proper scrum for 3 months, and try and scrummage against a Czech side who are up for it and who have been playing consistently. So the more game time, the more robust they'll be, the fitter they'll be, and the more learning and development they'll get as well, and to being able to play under live pressure, as opposed to having to go, okay, well, come in for a weekend, we can have a look at you. For me personally, I told the guys that you've got to be playing consistent club, rugby to get a look in, because that's the only way that we'll get a proper idea of if you're in form, if you're fit. And you can't recreate a match scenario over the course of a weekend, which is when we'd have a camp. So when we have a camp, when we had one in August, it was based on alignment. This is what we want to do in attack. This is what we want to do in defence. And we just went from there. What's our off-field, cultural side looking like? And realistically, that's, then we go ask them to play their games in their clubs, and we watch those games. Now pretty much every team is, using VO or broadcasting on YouTube or FaceTime, Facebook. So I think that's probably, the biggest benefit from what I've seen in terms of the restructuring of the Bundesliga.
Yeah.
Do you get an opportunity to then speak to the players, when obviously you're not on camp, and are you watching their footage and you getting them to do some reviews of their own stuff and give you feedback on where they are and what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have informal conversations, because obviously, the club coaches have, they'll be focused on maybe their skill development side of it or skill acquisition within the club context, because they see them more regularly and they have more contact time than we do. What we'll be looking at is, what are they going to be bringing, and then, okay, well, this is what we think you can bring to the team, and so that's what we'll be looking out for.
Because you've also got some of the S&C coach at Rugby Club Luxembourg is also your S&C coach at the national level, and the physio as well. Is that correct? So does that help having access on the inside a little bit to make sure lads are actually keeping honest?
I think like I said, 60 minutes in all 3 games, we were in it. And then those last 20 minutes is where we faded. And so the conditioning side of it was basically a non-negotiable coming into this season. We knew that was a big area that we needed to work on. So having someone like Yannick at both national and club was a massive boost. Because he was having more contact time with say probably 50% of the players, but he's very diligent as well in keeping up with the guys who are offshore. And so that's, having that in place is definitely benefited. And, we've been able to see guys' body shape change just since July when we first started, our preseason work. So that's been really rewarding. And I think, obviously it's benefited RCL, from their side of things as well, because they've got access to a very good strength and conditioning coach in Yannick.
Yeah, really top bloke when I met him as well, and he definitely beasted the lads in that session that I saw. That's for sure. So there's no hiding there. Some of the lads are saying obviously you've got training on a Monday, and then I think they were training Tuesdays and Thursdays as well. So definitely keep some of them honest. That's for sure. Jamie, obviously Jamie Cudmore's come and joined you. How did that conversation go? Did he did he take much convincing, or was it a case of it kind of fitted, or when he turned up, did he walk away and say, "What the fuck have you signed me up to"? How did that conversation go?
I mean, honestly speaking, like I think Luxembourg and Canada, and I'm speaking from experience with Canada, like there was always the gap between the guys who were playing at a good standard in France, be it top 14 Pro D2, or England, the guys playing Doncaster Knights at the time, and then guys playing domestically in Canada. There was always a gap there. Guys who were full-time rugby and guys who were working 9 to 5 and doing rugby twice a week, playing club rugby in Canada. And I think there's a lot of similarities there in terms of, I suppose, who we're working with in terms of the profile of player. At the same time, I think the amount of time that we're together is quite similar as well. Granted, to Canada, we'd probably have maybe 3 days more. Before a game, we might have a full week or 5 days, 6 days. That's probably the second similarity. And I think the third similarity is that the opposition that we play, or that we played in terms of Poland, Czech Republic, Sweden, they're actually 6 or 7 spots off the rankings from Canada. They're not that far off. They're above Germany. So I think there was a lot of I suppose similarities that I knew that Jamie could handle, because I know that Jamie, he's not just fresh off playing. He's had his work in Oyonnax, in Provence. He's been the general manager there. He's been the head coach. He's gone back to Canada, worked at junior level with the academy system. I worked with him in 2014 when he was still a player. And then in 2016, he came into the staff for the America's Rugby Championship. So, I saw him coach there, and I think, that's a while ago now, and he's gained so much in experience in terms of being able to transmit the message that he wants to get across. And I think that's sometimes the biggest trouble for former players is they've got so much information that they want to get through, but how you pass it on is a different thing, especially when we're talking short contact time. We've got 3 days before a game. What's the most important thing? How do I narrow it down into going, right, I'm going to need 2 bits of information. If I go even to 3 or 4, they're not even going to, and you've got 72 hours. What effect can you have? And obviously Jamie brings a presence as well, and I think that's only a positive as well when you come into the environment. And I know the forwards, they probably will want to absorb a lot of the knowledge that he has as well. There's a bloke who's played 4 World Cups and he won a top 14 title and played 200 times for Clermont. So he's got a wealth of experience and technical knowledge that he can pass on to the guys. Again, even if it's on a one-on-one just conversation, it can be a one-on-one conversation at the airport when we're traveling to Norway. Just little nuggets of gold. And I think part of my role is also to help from that front, but also help our staff as well, try and upskill. So Yannick, I've put him in touch with, we had a conversation with Steph Dutoit, who's the head of performance at Stade Rochelet at La Rochelle.
Nice.
And just be able to open some doors for them, like Eugene with the team manager at Stade Francais, just to understand what kind of things they do, how can we get better at what we want to do. And I think so if we can all keep growing that sense and almost have a continuous professional development within our staff, bouncing ideas off one another or looking outwards, it's going to be a massive positive. And that, again, I suppose we win a bit of time that way as well.
It's interesting to hear that at that level where you talk about the continual professional development, and from my short coaching journey, is that it's one of those ones that the RFU constantly sort of push out. There's all of these courses, but actually, I think sometimes it's nice to hear that, if you go and speak to other coaches, you go speak to other people just want to talk about rugby and be involved in rugby. And it's interesting to hear that it's not just at sort of like the lower levels and grassroots that's happening. I know Eddie Jones talked about it constantly, but it's still going on at that top level, and that's interesting to hear. And then for me, these are the sort of opportunities I want to get to be able to push forward in the next few years as well.
Yeah, I mean, I in 2019, I spent a few weeks in New Zealand doing a coaching course, and I think my biggest takeaway there was what Wayne Smith's share an idea, you get three in return, and I think that's a philosophy that I've kept with me since then. I've been willing to put myself out there, have conversations with coaches, whether it's grassroots, whether it's top 14 or international, or just whether they're strength and conditioning coaches, like even going on holiday there to Miami in June. Like I met up with a bloke who used to work in rugby for USA Sevens. He was the head of performance, working for Miami Marlins baseball, and now he's actually ended up at Scotland Rugby this season. So, but just to understand what they do in baseball and what can we, and just sharing, I suppose, concepts on that with that. And I think that's one thing that, again, being able to facilitate some of those exchanges, whether it's for the players or it's for the staff. I think that's part of my role to try and open some doors. I know that I've been fortunate enough to build a good sized network over the last few years. So, and overall, I think people in rugby are generally good people, and they'd be willing to give a bit of time and share, and they want to learn as well. Obviously, you got your exceptions as well who are closed off to it all, but I think.
Yeah,
if you're willing to share, then generally it's a two-way street. So that's probably my philosophy on it, on how I'm looking to continue growing as a coach and developing.
I had the pleasure of having Warren Abrahams on previously. Obviously, the rest in peace to Warren. Obviously, the sad news of the weekend, but he also used to coach players from a distance as well, because he used to have one-on-one stuff. And he said WhatsApp was crucial for him in that progress of being able to help advise players away from his current circle. Is that kind of a situation that every coach has now fallen into? Because pretty much every lad's got a phone in his hand or on WhatsApp. Yeah. And lad, can we look at this? Can you look at that? Can you... is that kind of how it goes? Lads just get a message across and say, I think this isn't quite working. How would I do that? And like yourself or Jamie, just drop them back say, just take a look at this, or I've done this, or speak to this person.
I can tell you now that it's the exact same way of delivering or feedback that it was at Stade Francais that it is with Luxembourg. In terms of the standard, we did it the same way. After training at Stade, we'd send a couple clips to the players via WhatsApp, because even though they're in a club environment, they're still going home to their families or the rest of it, and we know that they're going to sit in front of their phone. With players after the game with Luxembourg, I'd send them a few clips, or I'd organise a Zoom on a 1-to-1, and then we just go through maybe 2 or 3 clips, and that'd be it, or in person if they were on site. But I love to do the WhatsApp one just because I know it's easy for them to look at. Then you don't want to be sending a 2 or 3 minute video, because even a 2 or 3 minute video is too long. So generally I try to go, right, well, it's one thing or 2 things max that I want to send. I might throw in maybe like an arrow or 2, or just an example of what it should look like. But for me, it's a huge tool, and having been a skills coach, it helped a lot with the skill acquisition process, because it allows you to show what the end goal should look like. And guys have got different ways of learning. Like, some have told me that they don't like to see themselves do it. They prefer to see someone at the elite level do it. And understand, okay, because they're obviously going to be very critical of themselves in that sense. And so they might be overly critical, and they go, I'm still not getting it right. I'm still the perfectionist in them. Whereas if it's, someone at the top end of their game doing it, okay, that's what the end goal would look like, and this is where I'm at now, and they can actually, build a link there. But WhatsApp for me has been super important, that, and being able to, I think every coach now needs to have an understanding of how to code, how to clip, not have to rely on the analyst to do it. I think that's just the basics, and even in terms of Keynote or PowerPoint, you try and bring things to life a little bit. And I think if you fall into the trap of just a basic slide, what does that?
Yeah.
How does that affect their retention? Especially like I said, we're talking about short contact time. It needs to be punchy. It needs to be dynamic. It needs to be memorable. And that for me is been two big things. Is all right, let's make the meetings fun. Let's make them dynamic, not just sit there and look through a bloody playbook of X's and O's. Let's try and bring it to life a little bit.
Yeah. As you said, like the analyst is important, but if you don't understand what analysis, and it's like any job as well, isn't it? Like anyone running a business, if you don't understand the roles, what a role can do, you can have the wool pulled over your eyes. And how much do you think that's helped? Because obviously you've done the analyst side, you've done the skills coach, you've done all of these other roles to get to this point. How many people do you think kind of bypass those fundamental building blocks? Do you think that holds them back, or do you think because they've got to that point, do they just then look to bring the best person in? But also, if you don't have the money there to bring the best people in, do you think you feel like you've trod the right path by building the blocks yourself and then getting to know the role itself as well?
Well, I mean, it's like your comparison to doing it in your standard job. For me, I like the analogy of basically, if you're a hotel manager, you've got to understand how reception works. You've got to understand how room service works. You've got to understand how the kitchen, the restaurant, the concierge, the laundry, you've got to understand how it all works, because if something happens, then you're responsible for it and you've got to find a solution. Yeah. And I think the more experience you've had in a different department, whether it's S&C or physio, or analysis or management or whatever it might be, it's going to be applicable as a coach. Or maybe you've coached set piece and now you're coaching defense, or you've coached attack and now you're coaching defense, whatever it might be. I think it lends itself well to have a broader understanding in terms of first practical knowledge. But if you're in a head coach position, you need to understand the reality of some of the other roles. I know, having been an analyst, that I'm not going to ask our analyst to do an endless amount of, a 10-hour shift of individual coding for stats that, we're not really going to look at or use, because I know it's a waste of time, because I've been there myself. Just like an S&C might look at it and go, right, well, I'm not going to do this particular session because I know it's not going to be beneficial from a physical point of view 48 hours before a game. So I think it allows you to be more empathetic in terms of your management style, if you're the head coach, that is. You understand what's feasible and what's not. And so, but I think getting an understanding of the game from, or not just the game, but different areas from a 360 perspective. Like I try and learn it from the physios, so you get an understanding. If someone tells you about a particular injury, in the back of your mind, you go, oh, okay, well, I understand that. I know potentially what the return to play looks like. I know how many weeks they might be out. I'm no doctor, I'm no physio, but it just, you pick things up along the way, and that means this means that, and I think it helps you in that sense.
No, nice. And then obviously players will also tell you a different bit as well. So if you've played, it probably helps trying to navigate around that. Yeah. Obviously, we've gone through the current day and age of where we are now. So James, you've got quite a long list of experience, mate. So it'd be great to sort of get back to where the journey began and where you've gone on the journey, for those that aren't aware, mate. To be honest, where did the spark for rugby start?
In Spain, 2007. I go down there rather. 19 years old, and end up playing a little bit. End up playing for Alcobendas. Did my ACL beginning of the season. Was out for pretty much the whole 11 months. Came back, went back to there, and was still playing. And then 2011, I helped found the Barbars, Madrid Barbarians. Myself and two others basically started that club from nothing when we started going up in the division. From I suppose I was still playing, but I was doing a little bit of coaching there as well. And then I suppose from there, 2012. So there weren't too many jobs in Spain. By the time I finished uni there, it was just out of the recession, 2010. So that was, I had to sort of look abroad. Rugby was at this point probably still more of a hobby than anything, and I ended up going to New York for 6 months to work for a startup there in marketing. And then out of the blue, a mate of mine from Madrid sent me this thing from USA Rugby saying that the inaugural World Rugby Sevens was taking place, the Women's Sevens was taking place in Texas and Houston. So I basically applied for this liaison officer role there for a couple of weeks, took a couple of weeks off work, went down there, and I was assigned to the Canadian team, probably because I spoke French. And from there, mate, I stayed in comms with the high performance manager at the time, who was Steve Lancaster, who just come over from New Zealand from the Crusaders. And I told him, look, I don't think the cubicle life is for me. So if something ever comes up, I'll be willing to relocate. And 6 months later, I got a message from him, and he said, look, we've got something. It's only 3 months to begin with, but you never know. And so I went over to Canada late 2013, and 3 months ended up to being 4 years with them. Went back to Spain, got involved with Alcobendas again, but from a coaching perspective. And then from there, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, found a job in Luxembourg, so we moved over here. I finished up with Canada 2017, and then by that point I'd realised that, okay, well, rugby was what I wanted to get involved with, In 2015 I fractured my tibia as well, so I was well and truly done. Same leg as I did the ACL. Did that in Valencia, ended up in an ambulance from Valencia to Madrid, so that was a good long old ride. And and then after that I just turned all my attention to trying to, I suppose, forge away, because I'd not gone through, I suppose, the professional ranks that some guys have, and I've coached at a level that I would never have played at. I wouldn't have been playing top 14 by any means. So, but I think for me it's been fulfilling in that sense, because it's allowed me to see, well, if by having an open sort of mind about it and being willing to put yourself in a position, you can actually get to meet people, give you an opportunity, give you a chance, and if you're willing to work hard for it, then, as cliche as it is, doors do open, and so from Luxembourg, I got in touch with Kobus Pottgieter, who was the Germany coach at the time, and then he moved to Stade Francais, the academy there, and started working a little bit with him. So I started going to Paris on a basic weekly basis for a couple of days a week, just helping the under-18s at the time. But then moved to there's a guy there who worked with the FFR, who worked with the French under-20s, who told me that they were looking for an analyst. So then jumped over there as well, and that ended up being, I suppose, an analyst and skills coach. Went back to the academy at Stade. This was like at the same time, I guess. And then from there, the French seniors, which then off the back of that helped me, I suppose, get a gig with the pro team at Stade. And with that came Monaco, and then full circle back to Lux. So it's a bit of a domino effect in that sense. But I suppose if you go back to 2010, when I was, at a cold pitch in Puerto Riero in Madrid, coaching the Barbars, coaching 12 guys at the Barbars, where that I'd be, coaching in 2022, like I probably wouldn't have thought it'd be possible. But rugby, I suppose, is a little bit like that in terms of, as global as the game is, it's very much a small sport. There's people that know people, and the I suppose, you're one or two handshakes away from pretty much anyone in rugby. So
when you obviously you kind of got into those roles, as you said, you probably coached at a level higher than you'd ever played. Did you ever have a blip and feel like you're in imposter syndrome, like you wondered why you should be there?
Yeah, a lot of the time. But with France, it was slightly different because if you're there for a reason, and the players know that. Yeah. If you weren't good, you wouldn't be there in the first place. Does that make sense? So if you're wearing, you're in your France kit, he must be there for good reason. Whereas at club, I suppose you have to show that you're willing to put in the work, you're willing to help the players, accompany the players, you're there for the right reasons. And at the end of the day, like, rugby is rugby. So if rugby is rugby, but the other side of that is that, you need to be able and be willing, and this applies whether it's grassroots or professional, you've got to be able to help them to get from A to B. That's the essence of coaching, right? So if you're able to do that, then they trust you in that, and then hopefully you can help them on that journey. But there were a few times when you'd be there and you're like, oh geez, we've got to do a session with Marcus Kramer, and you're thinking, he's 24, he's already got 50 caps for the Pumas, and he's but those guys are so dedicated to their craft on the whole that they're willing just to pick up any bit of knowledge that they can, or work on their game just to be the best. I think it's quite nice though, having had those experiences and then come back to Lux, because for me, I know that what we had at French international level, we don't have the same resources, we don't have the same infrastructure, we don't have the same, so it's not realistic to think like that. With Canada, I know that there are probably still some margin, but I know what's possible and what's not possible. And having worked with the men's in Canada, I know that they probably had a bigger budget than what we do with Luxembourg men's. But then at the time, the women's had zero budget, but we still made it to a World Cup final, in 2014. And that's allowed me to understand, you don't necessarily need the financial means to get success. It helps 100%. But if you can do and control what's in your control and build on what you have, then hopefully success follows. But I think coming full circle is, giving me a bit more understanding of what's important when building a program with limited means.
Yeah, you must. How do you sort of sit there and mastermind that? Do you just sort of, as you said, you inherited it at such a short notice? You had a period of time of trying to bring in what you could. Now you've obviously got a bit of a vision and an expectation. Have you got like a mind map drawn on the wall behind you? Have you got like a plan of how you foresee it going to happen, or is it a case of
camera's facing that way? It's up here. I don't know how you see that. I see the reflection. But no, I do like a mind map, actually, to be fair, and I like to brainstorm and go, right, well, what leads to what, and what does that look like, and then it's almost like a process of elimination. Then you're left with this, and you go, okay, well, what's important now? This we can do without. This is it going to help us perform? Ultimately, is it going to be a hindrance? Even things that are traditionally done in clubs or teams, you sort of have to start questioning it and go, well, just because it's something that's done worldwide, is it actually worth it? Is it is it applicable to us? Just because they do it at the top end doesn't mean we should do it, or just because you're at the top end and they do it, at another level, we should try and copy and paste it. And if you go, anywhere around the world, any club around the world, it's pretty much the same. You'll see the same drills at the bottom end as you'll see at the top end. You see in the under 16s, you'll see it, and it's just the speed at which it's done. The collisions are different, obviously, and subtleties are different in terms of the detail that you go into. But when you're looking at a training session, and especially you're talking about, games or drills, they're pretty much the same. They're just variations.
Yeah.
But in terms of off-field preparation, then that's when you have to actually start looking and go, right, well, what can I cut away to try and allow us more time in terms of, preparation.
On that, are you quite rigid with your routines in terms of your prep ready for a week? I know I've been like that, and I know lots of other coaches have been like, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to do it, this is what we're going to get to, and this must be my journey, and therefore I expect my players to sort of follow that same thing. Are you quite rigid, or are you aware that you've got players coming from different backgrounds, who are, some are probably more professional, I guess, is that the right word? More professional than others, so they've got a different mindset, or do you just trying to create their own individual mindset, or is it a whole team approach when it comes to game days come Saturday?
I think you got to be flexible in certain areas, like a planning of a week, you send out the planning. For me, like being on time is a non-negotiable, for example. Obviously, shit happens and, life happens at times, but if there's a reason why, then sometimes you can justify it. But being on time and being honest, for me, are the two non-negotiables, because if you're honest first off on the field about the effort, about how you review yourself, about how conversations that we have, but the first one is being on time. But planning, when you got a planning needs to be flexible. Because if it's not, and everything is like at 10 o'clock on Thursday, we said we're doing this. Well, sometimes, especially at this level, not everything is, available to you, because maybe a member of the public is still in the sports hall that you wanted to use. What are you going to do? You can't do anything about it, or the bus took a wrong turn. What are you going to do? You just say you have to adapt. And so it's about finding that balance between constantly adapting and not letting that affect the players, and then how they react to that. Well, they'll react how you react to it. But I'm still rigid on structure, because I like to know what's next, and I think that helps the players as well, because clarity breeds confidence. So the earlier I can tell them what the week looks like, then they know, okay, this is where I've got some downtime. This is where I've got the gym, or this is where I've got a higher intensity session, so I can get mentally prepared for it. So all of those little things come into play. And I know for me, like, if you've got the whole week ahead and you've got the planning of the week, then at least you've got no real excuse. You can work around that. Yeah. If you've got a meeting or whatever, then you've got physio beforehand, then you can juggle it. Whereas sending the planning like the day before for the next day, I've always found that very hard to deal with.
I think we've gone pretty full circle. Just want to finish up with a little Q&A though, James. Yeah. Quick fire questions, mate. All right. So we're going to go, what's the best atmosphere you've ever experienced?
Best atmosphere I've ever experienced. I think there's two of them. 2014 World Cup semi-final with the women's beating France in Paris. That was unbelievable feeling, because they were the favourites, and so we beat them. Obviously lost England after that, but that feeling and that environment was unbelievable. And then the second one probably with Stade Francais beating Racing at Racing on a Christmas Eve. So it was a 24th of December Christmas Eve game, and we go there to the arena, we put 40 on them, and it was an unbelievable Christmas present.
I can imagine. Yeah. What was the most hostile ground?
La Rochelle could get pretty hostile. Yeah. Perpignan.
What's Perpignan? What's if you had to replay one game again with a different result, what would it be?
World Cup final.
Yeah. Best aftermatch scran that you've ever had?
Probably the France versus the Wallabies in Brisbane.
Best player you've ever coached or sort of played around?
Marcus Kramer in 15s.
in 15s and 7s then?
To South Africa.
Go on then, last one. Who's the best coach you've ever coached with?
Probably between Paul Gustard, two Englishmen for you, but probably Paul Gustard or Sean Edwards. There's one bloke who I would give him a shout out to just because of his the way he thought about rugby and the different, I suppose, switches on drills that he had, is Ben Herring.
I've interviewed Ben. What a bloke!
Yeah.
What a bloke as well.
He had a great way of just seeing the game, but also like very creative ways of setting up games and drills, and he's a good one as well.
Yeah, when we had him on at the start of this series, and great guest.
Yeah,
and obviously he's managed to get some amazing people on his podcast as well. So well worth a listen, that one as well, if you haven't already. But James, just want to say thank you so much for jumping on. Everyone, thank you so much for joining Rugby Through the Leagues podcast. This week we had James Kent on. Obviously, what a guest, what a rugby journey, and who knows, maybe we can get Jamie Cudmore on to tell us his yin to his yang for James for Rugby Luxembourg, and how the Luxembourg nation's going to change in the future. For everyone that wants to follow our other episodes, we're all on YouTube, everything like that as well. So click the follow button. Make sure you get subscribed to our future episodes, and thank you and goodbye.